Theo Lattimore was 38 years old when he came home from a 3-day job to a silent house. No barking, no paws on hardwood, no Zeus waiting at the door, the way he had every single day for 3 years. Theo built his contracting business from nothing, worked with his hands, trusted easily, loved simply. His wife Adrienne called that softness a weakness. She stood in the kitchen that evening, arms crossed, and told him she'd given his dog away while he was gone. No warning, no discussion, just gone. Her reason came out flat, almost bored. She wanted to teach him priorities. She had no idea he'd already started calculating. No idea what 48 hours of silence from her husband actually meant. She thought she'd taught him a lesson. And in that kitchen, watching her wait for an apology that would never come, Theo made a decision that would cost her everything she owned. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm didn't get a chance. Theo Lattimore was already awake at 4:47 a.m., eyes open in the dark, staring at the ceiling the way he always did before a big job. His mind ran through supply lists and crew assignments while the rest of the house was still quiet, still sleeping. He reached over and silenced the alarm before it buzzed. At the foot of the bed, Zeus lifted his head. He was a big dog, 70 pounds of brown and black mixed breed, wide chest, soft eyes that caught what little light came through the curtains. He didn't bark or jump. He just looked at Theo the way he always did, patient, steady, waiting. "Morning, big man," Theo said quietly. Zeus's tail swept once across the comforter. Theo swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat up slowly. His back was sore. It was always a little sore now at 38, after years of lifting, hauling, climbing scaffolding in all kinds of weather. He pressed his fists into the mattress and stood anyway. He crossed to the window and looked out at the street below. Dark and still. A single streetlight threw a pale circle on the wet pavement. He pulled on his sweats and a worn gray hoodie, then grabbed Zeus's leash from the hook by the bedroom door. Zeus was already sitting at his feet. The morning run was their ritual. Theo didn't skip it. Not for rain, not for early calls, not for anything. 20 minutes through the quiet neighborhood streets, Zeus trotting just ahead of him, nose working the cool air. No music, no podcast. Just the sound of their feet and the occasional car sliding past on the main road. Theo had found Zeus at the county shelter 6 years ago. The dog had been there 11 days, just past the typical hold window. Theo didn't think too hard about it. He just took him home. That was 2 years before he ever met Adrienne. Back at the house, Theo filled Zeus's bowl with kibble and stood at the kitchen counter while the coffee brewed, watching the dog eat, with the same focused contentment he applied to everything. Theo smiled. He wrote out a short list on a yellow notepad. Materials he needed confirmed for the Davenport build, a call he had to return to the tile supplier, a question for Ricky about the crew schedule. He circled the tile supplier's name twice. He was good at his job. He knew that, not with arrogance, but the same way he knew how to read a level or set a proper footing. He'd built Lattimore Contracting from nothing. No investors, no loans from family. Just his license, his tools, and a reputation he'd earned job by job over 15 years. People called him back. That was how he measured it. Adrienne came downstairs at 7:15, already fully dressed for work. Blazer pressed, hair done, heels clicking against the hardwood. She looked good. She always looked good, but there was a tightness around her eyes in the morning that she didn't bother to soften when it was just the two of them. Zeus trotted over to greet her. She stepped neatly around him. "He left hair on the couch again," she said, pouring a glass of water at the sink. "I'll lint roll it." She glanced over at Zeus, who had settled back by Theo's feet. "He's just a lot of work, Theo." All the time. She said it the way she said most things lately. Not quite a complaint, but not quite not one either. You ever think about what actually matters? Like, actually sits down and thinks about it? Theo looked up from his notepad. He matters. Adrian smiled, thin, controlled. That's very sweet. She picked up her bag, checked her phone once, and walked out to the garage without kissing him goodbye. That evening was worse. Adrian had planned a dinner with colleagues. Her boss, Preston Wexler's idea. Some rooftop wine thing she'd been talking about for 2 weeks. Theo had made an honest effort. Clean clothes, a ride share booked, the whole thing. He was standing in the kitchen buttoning his shirt when the vet's emergency line called back. Zeus had been limping on his rear left leg since the afternoon. Theo had noticed it on their evening walk. A subtle hitch in his step. Nothing dramatic, but wrong. He'd called and left a message. The callback came at 6:40. He went to the animal hospital. He was back by 9:30. Zeus had a minor soft tissue strain. Rest and anti-inflammatories, nothing serious. $28 and a 40-minute wait. Adrienne was already home when he got back. She was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, jacket still on, expression arranged into the specific kind of calm that meant she was furious. "You left," she said. "Zeus was limping, I told you." "You left Preston's event." She set the wine glass down carefully. "Do you understand how that looked?" Theo sat down across from her. He needed to be checked out. "He's a dog, Theo." Her voice was very even. "He's a dog. And you walked out of a work event that mattered to me, to my career, for a vet appointment." He was hurting. She looked at him for a long moment. There was something behind her eyes that he couldn't quite read. Not just anger. Something more settled than anger. "You know what you need?" she said, almost lightly. "You need someone to teach you about priorities one day. You really do." Theo held her gaze. He felt the sharpness in it, the edge she'd wrapped in a half-laugh. He didn't like it, but he let it go. "I'm heading out early tomorrow," he said. "Davenport job." "I know." She picked up her wine glass again. He was packed by 10. 1 bag, work clothes, boots, his worn leather dop kit. He was only going 3 days. He traveled light. He always had. Adrienne was already in bed, phone in hand, facing the wall. He turned the lamp off on his side and lay still in the dark for a while. In the morning, he was up before 4 again. He loaded the truck, drank his coffee, standing over the sink. Zeus followed him to the door. Theo crouched down and gave him a long scratch behind both ears. Zeus pressed his broad head into Theo's chest and held it there for a moment. "Be good," Theo said. He stood up, grabbed his keys, and pulled the front door shut behind him. The Davenport job had gone well. 3 days of long hours, good work, a crew that didn't complain. Theo had driven the whole 4 hours home with the windows down, one arm resting on the door, already thinking about Zeus, the way the dog would be sitting right behind the front door, tail going, the whole back half of him moving. He did it every single time. 3 days, 3 hours, didn't matter. Zeus was always there. Theo pulled into the driveway at 6:30. He was tired in the deep way that comes from good work. Muscles worn, mind quiet. He grabbed his bag from the back seat and walked up to the front door. He put his key in the lock, turned it, and pushed it open. Silence. He stood in the doorway for a second, just listening. No clicking of nails on hardwood, no soft whine from the hallway, nothing moving. He stepped inside and looked down at the floor by the kitchen. The food bowl was gone, the water bowl too. The little rubber mat they sat on, gone. "Zeus!" His voice came out low and even, but his chest tightened. He walked through the living room, into the kitchen, through the hall. He checked the laundry room where Zeus sometimes napped on a folded blanket in the corner. The blanket was still there, but the dog wasn't. He went out the back door into the yard and stood in the fading evening light, looking across the empty grass. Zeus! Nothing. He went back inside. He walked upstairs, checked the bedroom, the bathroom, behind the door in the guest room. He even checked the closet, which made no sense, but he checked it anyway. His heart was beating faster now, pushing up into his throat. He tried to think of explanations. Maybe Zeus had gotten out. Maybe a neighbor had him. Maybe... He heard the garage door. Adrian's car pulled in. He heard her heels on the garage steps, the door opening. She came in looking the way she always did after work, composed, put together, bag over one arm, phone in her other hand. She saw him standing in the kitchen and didn't flinch. "Where's Zeus?" Theo asked. She set her bag on the island. "I rehomed him," she said. The words landed like something dropped from a height. Theo didn't move. "While you were gone," she continued, her voice smooth and unbothered, "I reached out through an online rehoming contact. A family was interested. They came on Friday and picked him up." Theo stared at her. "You—" He stopped. "You gave him away." "I rehomed him." She said it like the word choice mattered. "There's a difference. Adrian—" He kept his voice flat. "Who has him? I need a name, a number, an address." She looked at him with an expression he'd never seen on her before. Not guilt, not regret. Something closer to resolution. Like she'd made a decision and had no interest in revisiting it. "I deleted the messages," she said, "after they picked him up." "You deleted?" He breathed. "Why would you delete them?" "Because it's done, Theo." She set her phone face down on the counter. "I know this is hard to hear right now, but I did this for us, for our marriage. You have been putting that dog ahead of everything, ahead of me, ahead of us, ahead of things that actually matter. You left Preston's dinner for a vet appointment. You rearrange your whole schedule around him. I needed you to understand what priorities actually look like." She said it calmly, like a teacher explaining a concept to a slow student. "So this was a lesson," Theo said. "Yes." She met his eyes without blinking. "It was." He stood very still. The kitchen felt strange. Too quiet, too clean. The spot by the back door where Zeus's mat used to be was just bare floor now, just hardwood and empty space. Something moved through him, hot, enormous, rising fast. He felt it climb his chest, push against the back of his teeth. He let it pass. "Okay," he said. Adrian blinked. "Okay?" He didn't answer. He picked up his bag from where he'd dropped it by the door, carried it upstairs and set it on the bedroom floor. He sat on the edge of the bed in the dark for a while. Then he got up, showered, and came back to bed. Adrian came up an hour later. She went through her whole nighttime routine, face wash, skin creams, the whole quiet ritual of it, and got into bed like nothing had broken. She was asleep in 20 minutes. He could tell by her breathing. Theo lay on his back, eyes open, looking at the ceiling. He didn't feel the rage anymore. It had gone somewhere else, somewhere deeper and more useful. What he felt now was cold and clear, like the air before a frost. He thought about the missing bowls, the deleted messages, the way she'd said it's done without a single tremor in her voice. He would not yell. He'd learned a long time ago that yelling was for people who had no other move. He wouldn't argue either, and he would not beg. He would act, and she would not see it coming. Theo was up before 5. He didn't need an alarm. His body knew. He lay still for a few minutes, listening to Adrian breathe beside him, then got up quietly and went downstairs. He made coffee. He stood at the kitchen window and drank it while the sky turned from black to gray to pale orange. The yard was still. No movement, no sound, just the empty patch of grass where Zeus used to sprint along the fence line every morning, burning off energy before Theo could even finish lacing his boots. He finished the coffee and rinsed the mug. At 7:15, Adrian came downstairs in her work clothes, cream blouse, charcoal blazer, the heels that added 2 inches and made her walk like she owned whatever room she entered. She poured herself a coffee to go, checked her phone twice, picked up her bag. "I'll be late tonight," she said. "Preston has us doing a review before the campaign drops." "Okay," Theo said. She gave him a brief look, searching for something, maybe residual anger, maybe the argument she thought would come eventually, and found nothing useful in his face. She left. The garage door rumbled down behind her. Theo waited by the window until her car turned off the street and disappeared. Then he went to work. He started with the jewelry. Adrian kept it in a wooden box on the top shelf of her closet. A dark mahogany case with a brass latch, the kind that looked inherited because it was. Her late grandmother's pieces were in a separate pouch inside. A pearl brooch, a thin gold bracelet with a clasp shaped like a leaf, 2 rings that looked old and serious and expensive. Adrian had displayed them at their wedding and never wore them otherwise, but she'd told anyone who would listen that they were irreplaceable. Theo carried the whole case to his truck, then drove to a donation center on Meridian Street that accepted estate jewelry. He spoke to the woman at the front desk, explained he was donating a collection, and asked for an itemized receipt. She handed him a form. He filled it out, line by line, then photographed the completed receipt with his phone before folding it into his shirt pocket. He was back home by 9:30. The wardrobe took most of the morning. Adrian's closet ran the full length of the back wall, organized by color, by season, by some system that made sense only to her. Blazers, blouses, dresses still in dry cleaning bags, shoes lined in pairs at the bottom like a small and silent army. Designer labels, most of them. Things she'd collected over 7 years of climbing at the firm. Things she talked about casually but cared about deeply. He found flat boxes in the garage, the kind left over from the last move. He packed everything carefully, folded, not crumpled. He wasn't doing this out of rage. Rage was sloppy. This was precise. 4 trips to the truck. The women's shelter on Cobb Avenue had a donation entrance around the side. A woman in a burgundy vest came out with a rolling rack and looked at what Theo had brought. Her eyes went wide a little, moving down the line of bags. "These are in great condition," she said. "They should be," Theo said. He got a receipt there, too, photographed it, filed it in the folder he'd started on his phone. The awards were last. Adrian had 5 of them, 3 from her firm, 1 regional industry recognition, 1 from a trade group she'd spoken at 3 years back. They were framed and hung in the small office at the end of the hall, evenly spaced, like a gallery she'd curated of herself. Theo had always thought the arrangement said more about her than any conversation they'd ever had. He took them down one at a time, wrapped each frame in a moving blanket, and laid them flat in a box. Then he drove to Odessa Price's house on the east side, a tidy brick single-story with rose bushes along the front walk that Odessa kept up herself. He set the box on the porch. He wrote a short note on the back of a business card and tucked it under the top flap. "Adrian's things. She'll want them." He drove home. By 5 o'clock the house was different. Not wrecked. Nothing was broken. Nothing was thrown. But the closet was bare. The jewelry shelf was empty. The office wall held nothing but pale squares where the frames used to hang, small ghosts of the things that had been there. Theo sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and waited. He heard the garage at 6:30. Adrian's heels on the steps. The door opening. A pause. He heard her go upstairs. Then silence. Then the sound of a closet opening, and for a moment, nothing. Then her footsteps, fast and hard, coming back down. She appeared in the kitchen doorway. Her face had gone tight and white, the kind of expression that comes just before a person starts to scream. "Where are my things?" Her voice was low and shaking. Theo looked at her from across the table. "I rehomed them," he said. "What?" She grabbed the door frame. "Are you out of your mind? Theo, where is my grandmother's jewelry? Where are my—" "I donated it. I have the receipts." "You—" The word broke. "You donated my grandmother's jewelry?" "I did." He folded his hands on the table. A woman at the donation center said it was a wonderful collection. Theo called Malik at 7 in the morning. He hadn't slept much. He'd lain on his side of the bed while Adrienne cried in the guest room down the hall, her muffled voice rising and falling through the wall, and he'd stared at the ceiling and thought about Zeus. Not about Adrienne, not about the confrontation, not about what came next legally or financially. Just Zeus. The way the dog would press his nose against the back of Theo's knee when he stood too long at the kitchen counter. The way he'd flatten himself onto the floor during thunderstorms and look up with those big, stupid, trusting eyes like Theo could personally fix the weather. "I need you to come over," Theo said when Malik picked up. "Tell me when." "This afternoon. I need help finding something." Malik didn't ask questions. That was the thing about him. He never needed to fill silence with noise. "I'll be there at 2, he said, and hung up. Malik arrived at 2 on the dot, the way he always did. He came through the front door, looked around the living room, took in the quiet and the stripped walls and the general feeling that something had been surgically removed from the house. He set his keys on the counter. "She still here?" he asked. "Went to work," Theo said. "Same as always." Malik nodded once, like that told him something. "Okay, what are we looking at?" Theo set Adrienne's laptop on the kitchen table. He'd found it in the office that morning, sitting closed on the desk, exactly where she always left it. He hadn't opened it yet. He'd waited. "She says she deleted everything," Theo said. "The messages with whoever she gave Zeus to. Says she doesn't have a name, doesn't have contact info, nothing." Malik pulled out a chair and sat down. "Let's see about that." He wasn't a tech guy, not exactly, but Malik had grown up resourceful, and resourceful people learn fast. He opened the browser history first, scrolling slowly, and Theo stood over his shoulder and watched. Most of it was ordinary. News sites, work stuff, a couple of shopping pages. Then Malik stopped. "There," he said. It was a URL for a site called Find My Pet Forum, an informal listing board, the kind with no oversight, no vetting, just posts from people looking to give away animals or find them. Malik clicked through the cached version. The page loaded partially, enough to show the category Adrienne had been browsing. Rehoming, dogs, metro area. Theo's jaw tightened. "This isn't a rescue," Malik said, turning to look at him. "This is just people, random people posting on a message board. No background checks, no home visits, no follow-up." "I know what it is." "I'm saying she didn't send Zeus to an organization, Theo. She handed him off to a stranger on the internet and asked no questions." The room was very quiet. Malik went back to the laptop. He opened the email client next and checked the drafts folder, the place people forgot to look because they thought deleted meant gone. There were 3 draft messages, none of them sent, but enough to show the shape of a conversation. A name, D. Holloway. A message confirming a pickup time. Another draft asking if the dog was well-behaved around kids. Theo photographed each one. Then Malik found the group chat. It was buried in a messaging app Adrienne kept logged in on the browser, a thread with 4 names, Theo half recognized, women from Adrienne's circle. He almost scrolled past it, but the preview line at the top of the thread stopped him cold. I've been trying to figure out how to handle the dog situation for a while now. Malik opened it. The thread went back 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Adrienne floating the idea, testing it, asking for advice. Does anyone know how rehoming works? Is it legal to just list them online? He'd never actually get rid of him on his own. And then, 3 weeks before Theo's trip, I think I'm going to do it while he's out of town. Less drama that way. One of the women had written back, "Adrienne, are you sure? That feels extreme." Adrienne's reply, "It's the only way he'll actually learn." Malik sat back in the chair. Neither of them said anything for a moment. "She was planning this for over a month," Malik said finally. Theo didn't answer right away. He was looking at the screenshots lined up on the table in front of him. The forum page, the email drafts, the chat thread. Each one a piece of something he'd been trying to assemble since the night he came home to an empty doorway. He thought he'd understood what had happened. A rash decision. A cruel one, but impulsive. The kind of thing a person does in a moment of frustration and wraps in justification after. That's what he'd told himself. But this wasn't that. This was planned, measured, executed on a timeline. He looked at Malik. "We need to find out what else she's been hiding," he said. Malik left around 5. Theo walked him to the door, and Malik paused on the front step, hands in his jacket pockets, and looked at him the way he did when he had something to say, but was choosing his words carefully. "You eating tonight?" Malik asked. "I'll figure it out." Malik nodded, but he didn't move right away. "You know where I am if you need me." "I know." After the door closed, Theo stood in the hallway for a moment. The house felt too big, too quiet. Zeus had always filled it with a kind of low-level noise, nails on hardwood, the soft thump of him settling into his bed, the occasional sneeze that sounded like a question. Now there was nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. He went to the kitchen table and opened his laptop. He told himself he was just getting organized. That's what he'd said to himself when he sat down. You need to know where things stand financially. That's it. That's the only reason. He pulled up their joint checking account first, the one they'd opened together 4 years ago, the one where his contracting income went and her salary hit on the 15th and last of every month. He started with the most recent statement and worked backward, scanning line by line. Groceries, utilities, the mortgage, a handful of restaurant charges, normal. Then he found it. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself. It was just a small line item, easy to miss, a transfer of $240, routed to an account number he didn't recognize. He scrolled back a few weeks. Another one, $200. Different date, same destination account. He sat up straighter. He went back further. October, another transfer. September, 2 more. August, when they'd been on a trip to see her college friend in Savannah, laughing over dinner, acting like people who were fine. There it was again. $180 slipping out quietly while he wasn't looking. He grabbed a notepad and started writing them down. By 9 o'clock, he had 14 separate transfers spread across 8 months. None of them were large enough to notice on their own. $60 here, $300 there, scattered just wide enough apart to blur together in the noise of normal monthly spending. But added up, they came to just over $4,000. He traced the destination account number through their bank's transfer portal. The account was held at a separate institution, a regional bank neither of them used. The name on the account came back in the confirmation field, small and plain. Adrienne C. Lattimore. Her account. Only hers. Opened, according to the transfer history, the previous spring. Theo put his pen down. He stared at the number on the notepad. 8 months. She had been doing this for 8 months. Quietly, carefully, a little at a time. The way you move something heavy without wanting anyone to notice the effort. The way you prepare for something you've already decided is going to happen. He thought about the group chat on her laptop. I think I'm going to do it while he's out of town. Less drama that way. 6 weeks ago. But this account, this quiet drain on everything they'd built together, that had been running since before last spring. The dog was never the beginning of this. He sat with that for a long minute. Zeus wasn't the reason she'd been pulling away. Zeus wasn't the reason she'd started sleeping with her phone face down on the nightstand, or deflecting questions, or filling their evenings with a polite, practiced distance. Zeus was the ending she'd engineered, the dramatic moment she could point to, the thing she could frame as his failure, his misplaced priorities, his inability to put the marriage first. She'd handed his dog to a stranger on the internet, not out of frustration, not even out of spite, not exactly. She'd done it to make him react. She needed him to blow up, to storm out, to be the one who walked away, so she could be the one left standing with clean hands. Theo looked at the notepad again. The column of dates and dollar amounts, each one patient and deliberate, stacking up into something that told the whole story if you knew how to read it. He'd read it. He pulled a portable drive from the drawer beside the router, plugged it in, and started copying files. Every bank statement going back a full year, screenshots of the transfer records, the destination account confirmation, the notepad he photographed with his phone and transferred over to. He worked quietly, without hurry. When the drive was full and the copies were confirmed, he closed his laptop and set it aside. He sat in the kitchen for a moment, the house still dark and silent around him. Then he thought about Odessa, Adrian's mother, a careful woman, not unkind, who had always watched her daughter with an expression Theo had never quite been able to name. Not pride, exactly. Something more complicated than pride. He wondered now what Odessa knew. He thought it was time to find out. The box was heavy. Theo had carried it out to his truck that morning without thinking too hard about it. Adrian's framed industry awards, still packed from 3 days ago, still sitting in the truck bed, where he'd left them after dropping the others on Odessa's porch. He'd left those in a hurry. No conversation, just the box and a short note tucked under the flap. He hadn't planned to go back. But now he had a reason, or at least something that looked like one. Odessa Price lived 20 minutes south of them, in a small brick house on a wide, flat street lined with oak trees. The yard was neat. Window boxes with late-season flowers that were just starting to go brown at the edges. A welcome mat that actually meant it. Theo pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment before getting out. He hadn't called ahead. He almost had, twice, and then stopped himself both times. If he called, Odessa might mention it to Adrian, and Adrian would know he was asking questions. He didn't need that. Not yet. He grabbed the box from the truck bed and carried it up the front walk. Odessa answered before he finished knocking. She looked at him through the screen door, at his face, then at the box, then at his face again. Something passed through her expression that wasn't surprise. Theo. Morning, Odessa. I still had this in my truck. Thought I should bring it inside instead of just leaving it. She pushed the screen door open. Come in. The house smelled like coffee and something baked. Cornbread, maybe, or biscuits from earlier. Theo set the box down near the door and followed her into the kitchen, where she poured him a cup without asking. He sat at the table. She sat across from him. For a moment, neither of them said anything. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm managing. She wrapped both hands around her mug and looked at the table. Not at him. At the table, like she was working something out. "She called me," Odessa said. "After, to tell me what she'd done with the dog." She paused. The way she said it. She stopped again. Theo waited. She sounded pleased with herself. Odessa's voice was quiet and flat, like she'd handled something, like it had gone well. She finally looked up. That bothered me more than I let on to her. Theo nodded once. He kept his hand still around his coffee cup and let her talk. "I've been making excuses for Adrian for a long time," Odessa said. "Mothers do that. You tell yourself it's complicated, that you don't know the whole story, that your child isn't the version of herself other people see." She exhaled through her nose. "But I've known for a while that something wasn't right." Theo said carefully, "What kind of something?" Odessa looked at him, directly this time. The kind of look that meant she'd already decided what she was going to say and was just finding the nerve to say it. "There's a man she works with," she said. "Her boss, Preston Wexler." She said the name like it tasted sour. "It's been going on for close to a year. She didn't tell me. I'm her mother, so of course she didn't tell me. But I'm not blind. The way she talks about him. The schedule changes. The work trips that were a little too frequent." She shook her head. "I asked her outright, back in the spring. She denied it. But she didn't deny it the way you do when something isn't true. She denied it the way you do when you just don't want to discuss it." The spring. The same time the account started. Theo kept his face even. "Okay," he said. "He's married," Odessa added, like Theo needed the weight of that dropped in front of him clearly. "His wife doesn't know. Or didn't. I don't know what she knows now." Theo thought about the transfers, about Zeus, about the group chat message. Less drama that way. "Odessa," he said, "has she done something like this before? The way she set this up, making me look like the problem, engineering a reason to leave?" Odessa was quiet for a long moment. "There was a man before you," she finally said. "Daniel. They were together almost 3 years. She picked a fight near the end. Something about his family, about him not choosing her over his obligations. She made it unbearable until he left. Then she told everyone he hadn't been able to meet her where she was." A pause. "She'd been seeing someone else for 4 months before that fight ever happened." Theo sat back in his chair. Not a pattern she'd stumbled into, a pattern she'd practiced. The dog, the account, Preston, all of it moved together in his mind now, smooth and deliberate as gears in a machine that had been running quietly for 8 months while he went to work and came home and trusted the life he thought he had. He looked at Odessa. "Thank you for telling me." She met his eyes. "I should have said something sooner." She held his gaze for a moment, then said quietly and without hesitation, "Whatever you need from me, Theo, I mean that." Theo called Bianca Ferris at 8 o'clock the next morning, standing in his kitchen with a folder on the counter in front of him, and Zeus's empty water bowl still sitting beside the sink, where he hadn't moved it. He'd found her name through a referral, a guy on his crew whose brother had used her in a messy split 2 years back. "She doesn't miss," the guy had said. "She's not cheap, but she doesn't miss." Theo had made the call. Bianca's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown, clean and spare, the kind of space that said she spent her time working rather than decorating. She was maybe 40, with close-cropped hair and reading glasses she pushed up onto her head when she wasn't looking at documents. She shook Theo's hand once, firm, pointed him to a chair, and got straight to it. "Walk me through the timeline," she said. "Start to finish. Don't leave anything out." He did. She listened without interrupting, making notes on a yellow legal pad in small, tight handwriting. When he finished, He slid the folder across the desk. The bank statements, the screenshots of the group chat, the donation receipts, the rehoming platform fragments, the transfer history going back 8 months. Bianca went through everything slowly, a page at a time. When she got to the financial transfers, she tapped the sheet twice with her pen and looked up. "How long did you say these had been running?" 8 months, starting last March. "And you had no knowledge of this account?" "None." She nodded, already writing. Concealment of marital assets is a significant problem for her, especially with this kind of paper trail. Consistent, recurring, long before any documented conflict. She set the page down. She can't argue this was reactive. The math doesn't allow it. What does that mean for the settlement? It means she walks in already behind. Judges take a dim view of one spouse quietly moving shared money into a private account for 8 months. It speaks to intent. She picked up the group chat screenshot next, studied it. The premeditated rehoming supports the same narrative, someone who was planning an exit, not responding to one. That matters when we're characterizing the conduct in this marriage. And the affair? Bianca set down her pen. That depends. Adultery carries different legal weight in different jurisdictions, and I won't oversell it. But the fact that it's with a direct supervisor at her current employer is a separate issue entirely. That's a workplace conduct question. It doesn't help her professionally, and it removes one of her key financial assumptions. If her employment situation becomes unstable, her argument for a larger share of shared assets weakens considerably. She folded her hands on the desk. What I can tell you is that right now you have a very strong position. The financial misconduct alone gets us where we need to go. Theo looked at the folder spread across her desk. Weeks ago, it had been a life. Now, it was evidence. "Okay," he said. "Tell me what to do." Malik called that same afternoon. Theo was back in his truck, parked outside a supply warehouse, when his phone buzzed. He picked up on the first ring. "I got him," Malik said. Theo went still. "Say that again." "Zeus. I got a contact at the platform, guy I did a landscaping job for last summer. Turns out he does admin work there on the side. He pulled the listing logs." A pause. "Family about 40 minutes east of you. Mom, dad, 2 kids. They named him something different, but it's him. The description matches, the intake date matches, everything matches." Another pause, shorter. "Theo, they said he's good. He's sleeping inside, eating well. Kids are crazy about him." Theo pressed his hand flat against the steering wheel and breathed. He hadn't let himself think too hard about what might have happened to Zeus. He'd kept that door closed because opening it led somewhere he couldn't afford to go while he was still building everything out. But it had been there, underneath all of it, every night, the not knowing. "He's okay," Theo said. It wasn't really a question. "He's good, man. I promise you, he's good." At home that evening, Adrian moved through the house like someone waiting for a door to open. She'd been watching him for days, measuring his silences, testing the air between them. Theo could feel it. She brought it up over dinner she barely touched. "We should talk about next steps," she said. Her voice was steady, practiced. "There's no reason this has to get complicated. A clean split, quick. We both move on." Theo looked at her. "Sure," he said. "Set something up." She blinked. Whatever she'd expected, resistance, emotion, an argument she could steer, it wasn't that. "I'll reach out to a mediator." "Fine." She watched him a moment longer, then looked back down at her plate. Satisfied, he could tell. She thought his calm meant surrender. She had no idea what was sitting in a folder on Bianca Ferris's desk. He texted Bianca that night from the driveway, sitting in his truck in the dark. "She wants mediation." I told her yes. Bianca's reply came back in under 2 minutes. "Good. We're ready. Let her call it." Theo read the message once, then set his phone face down on the passenger seat. Every record was organized. Zeus was safe. Adrienne had just handed him the room. He was ready. The conference room was on the 3rd floor of a neutral legal building downtown, the kind of place designed to feel like nothing. Beige walls, a long table, chairs that didn't quite match. A mediator named Gerald sat at the head of the table, gray-haired and quiet, with a notepad and a water pitcher nobody touched. Adrienne arrived looking put together. Sharp blazer, hair pinned back, a leather portfolio she set on the table like a statement. She brought her attorney, a man named DeVries, who had the easy, slightly bored confidence of someone who expected this to be over by lunch. Theo arrived with Bianca. He wore the same thing he'd wear to a job walkthrough: work pants, clean shirt, boots. He sat down, folded his hands on the table, and said nothing. Adrienne glanced at him once, quickly, then looked away. He saw her read his calm as weakness. She'd been reading it that way for weeks. He let her. Gerald opened with ground rules. Both sides nodded. DeVries made a small show of clicking his pen. Bianca opened her folder. "Before we discuss terms," she said, in a voice that didn't rise or rush, "we'd like to walk through some documented history. For the record." DeVries frowned. "We're here to negotiate a settlement, not—" "This is relevant to the settlement." Bianca didn't look at him. She slid a single sheet across the table toward Adrienne. "Mrs. Lattimore, do you recognize this?" Adrienne looked down. It was a screenshot, her own words, pulled from the group chat she'd had with her friends weeks before Theo left for his job. Does anyone know how to handle a dog situation? I need it gone before things get messy. 3 weeks before Zeus disappeared. Adrienne's jaw tightened. That's taken out of context. "The date stamp is visible," Bianca said. "This conversation happened 22 days before your husband returned home to find his dog rehomed. The rehoming you described to him as a spontaneous decision made out of frustration." Silence. Theo watched her face. He'd imagined this moment. He'd thought it might feel like anger or grief or satisfaction. Mostly, it just felt like clarity. "The second item," Bianca continued, sliding another sheet across, "is a summary of transactions from the joint savings account, cross-referenced with deposits into an account opened solely in your name last March. 8 months of transfers. Consistent. Regular. Predating any documented conflict in the marriage by several months." DeVries leaned over and looked at the page. His easy expression didn't hold as long as he probably wanted it to. Adrienne opened her mouth, closed it. "You told me I needed to learn priorities," Theo said. His voice was low, even. He didn't look away from her. "While you were doing that, you'd already moved $4,300 out of our shared savings. You already knew what you were planning. Zeus wasn't the reason. He was the excuse." "Theo," she said his name like a warning. "I'm not finished." He'd never spoken to her quite like that. Soft, but absolute. No room in it. "The third item," Bianca said, and slid the last page across, "is a written account provided voluntarily by Odessa Price, your mother. It documents your relationship with Preston Wexler going back approximately 11 months. It also documents a prior relationship in which you used a similar pattern, manufacturing a situation to make the other person appear to be the cause of the breakdown." Bianca set her pen down. She signed it. The room went very quiet. Adrienne stared at the paper. Her mother's name was right there at the bottom, in handwriting she'd known her whole life. Something moved across her face. Something Theo had never seen before. Not guilt. More like the look of a person who has just realized the floor they were standing on had been hollow the whole time. This is... She pushed the page back across the table. This is manipulation. He went to my mother and manipulated her into... She came to him, Bianca said simply. That's also documented. You can't use any of this. Adrian looked at DeVries. Tell them they can't use this. DeVries was already reading the financial summary again, his jaw set. He didn't answer her right away. The financial concealment alone is actionable, Bianca said. Everything else simply provides context. Adrienne turned to Theo. Her composure was gone now, stripped back, leaving something rawer underneath. You've been planning this the whole time. You've been sitting in that house pretending, I've been doing what you taught me, Theo said. I learned the lesson. Her face went red. She said several things quickly, her voice climbing, about his hours, about Zeus, about how she'd given years to the marriage and how he'd never really shown up, how this was exactly why she'd done what she did, how the dog was a symptom of something broken in him. She was still talking when she stood up and grabbed her portfolio and walked to the door. DeVries said her name once, professionally. She didn't stop. The door swung shut behind her. The room was quiet again. Gerald set down his notepad. Bianca gathered her papers with the calm efficiency of someone who had already moved on to the next step. With this on the table, she said to Theo, without looking up, the settlement will overwhelmingly favor you. Bianca filed the documentation on a Tuesday morning. Theo didn't watch her do it. He was on a job site in Clarkson, overseeing a foundation repair, when his phone buzzed with her confirmation email. He read it once, pocketed his phone, and went back to work. The paperwork named Preston Wexler by full name. It laid out the timeline in clean, factual language, the 11 months, the overlap with the hidden account, the affair between a senior director and his direct report. Bianca had been clear with Theo. She wasn't filing it to cause damage. She was filing it because it was material to the case. What the company chose to do with it was their business. What the company chose to do with it, it turned out, was act very quickly and very quietly. Theo heard about the termination through Bianca, who heard it through the standard chain. Adrienne's firm had a workplace conduct policy. The relationship violated it. Human Resources opened a review on a Wednesday. By Friday, Adrienne was out. Theo didn't feel anything particular when he heard. No satisfaction exactly, more like watching a row of dominoes fall that had always been going to fall. She had built the whole thing on a surface that couldn't hold weight. Eventually, it was going to give. Preston's wife was named Carolyn. Theo found her through a simple search. The Wexlers weren't hard to locate. Nice neighborhood, big house, 2 cars in the driveway. He drove over on a Saturday afternoon, not because he had a plan, but because he kept thinking about the night Adrienne came home and told him Zeus was gone, and he'd had no warning, no chance to prepare, no one who thought he deserved to know. Carolyn answered the door in jeans and a sweater, dark-haired, mid-40s, carrying a coffee mug. She looked at him with cautious politeness. "My name is Theo Lattimore," he said. "I was married to Adrienne Price. I think you deserve to hear some things directly." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped back and opened the door. He sat at her kitchen table and told her the truth. The full timeline. What Odessa had confirmed. What the documents showed. He didn't editorialize or perform it. He spoke the way he'd spoken at mediation. Low, even. Factual. When he was done, Carolyn was quiet for a while. She had set her coffee mug down about halfway through and hadn't picked it back up. "How long have you known?" she asked. "A few weeks." She nodded slowly. She wasn't crying. She looked more like someone whose leg had gone numb, not in pain yet, but already knowing the pain was coming. "Thank you," she said, "for coming here." That was all Theo needed to hear. He drove home and never contacted either of them again. Whatever happened inside that house after he left was between Carolyn and Preston. He hadn't gone there to start a fire. He'd gone there because she had a right to know, just like he'd had a right to know. From what Bianca mentioned later, Preston's home life unraveled fast. Carolyn had people in her corner, apparently. She moved decisively. Preston lost his marriage and, shortly after, his position at the firm, a separate process from Adrian's termination, driven entirely by Carolyn's own choices. Theo had nothing to do with that part. He didn't need to. Odessa called him once, about 2 weeks after mediation. "She's not speaking to me," Odessa said. Her voice sounded tired and a little smaller than usual. "I'm sorry," Theo said, and he meant it. "Don't be." A pause. "I should have said something a long time ago. To her, to you. I let it go too long." He didn't argue with that. "Is the dog?" Odessa started. "I'm getting him back," Theo said. "Soon." She let out a breath that sounded like relief. "Good," she said. "That's good, Theo." The settlement was signed on a Thursday afternoon. Theo sat across from DeVries, who had dropped the board confidence somewhere around the second week of proceedings. Bianca walked through each term with her usual quiet efficiency. The hidden account was factored in. The financial misconduct shifted the balance significantly. The documented premeditation removed any argument about fault. Adrian wasn't present at the signing. DeVries signed on her behalf. Theo initialed each page in his steady, unhurried handwriting. Then he signed the last page, clicked the pen closed, and set it down. Outside, it was overcast and cool. He walked to his truck alone, taking his time. He sat behind the wheel for a minute before starting the engine. Back at the house, his house, clear in the paperwork now, he walked through the front door into the quiet. The evidence boxes were gone, carried out the week before. Bianca had the files. His copies were on an external drive, locked in his office drawer. The living room was just a living room again. He stood in the middle of it and let the silence settle around him. No tension in it, no dread waiting underneath. The fight was over. The address was in Maplewood, a quiet street with wide front yards and old oak trees lining the sidewalk. Theo drove slowly, checking the house numbers. His palms were dry, but his chest was tight. He'd been fine all morning, steady through breakfast, steady through the drive. But now that he was close, something kept catching in his throat. He found the house, a gray 2-story with a green front door, a child's bicycle leaning against the porch railing. He parked and sat for a moment. Malik had spoken to them once already. A brief call to let them know someone was coming, that there was a story they needed to hear. They'd been cautious, but willing. That was enough to go on. Theo got out of the truck. He knocked. A woman answered, late 30s, brown hair, a dish towel over one shoulder. She looked at him with the same careful openness Carolyn had, like she already suspected this conversation was going to matter. "Mr. Lattimore?" she said. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for seeing me." She let him in. Her name was Diane. Her husband, Ray, was already seated at the kitchen table. 2 kids somewhere in the back of the house. He could hear them. And then, before Theo even sat down, he heard something else. Nails on hardwood floor. Zeus came around the corner from the hallway and stopped. For a second, neither of them moved. Then Zeus crossed the kitchen in 4 long strides and hit Theo square in the chest, both front paws up, tail going so hard his whole back half swung with it. Theo dropped to one knee and grabbed him with both hands, pressing his face into the dog's neck. Zeus made a sound he'd never made at anything else, low and urgent and relieved, like he'd been holding it the whole time. Theo held on. He didn't say anything. He didn't have words for it. He just stayed there on the kitchen floor, one knee down, both arms around his dog, breathing. Diane had her hand over her mouth. Ray looked at the table. After a moment, Theo stood up. Zeus stayed pressed against his leg, not moving an inch. "I'm sorry to come here like this," Theo said. His voice was rough. He cleared it. "Don't apologize," Diane said. Her eyes were wet. "We knew something wasn't right. The listing was vague. He was too well trained, too attached." She shook her head. "Our kids love him, but he spent the first 2 weeks sitting by the front door." Theo looked down at Zeus. Zeus looked back up at him. "I'll tell you everything," Theo said. "Whatever you want to know." He did. He kept it simple and honest. The marriage, the trip, coming home to an empty doorway. Diane listened without interrupting. Ray asked one question: "Did you want to give him up?" And Theo said no. Just the one word. Ray nodded, pushed back from the table. "Then take him home," he said. They let the kids say goodbye. That part was hard to watch. The younger one, a girl maybe 7 years old, hugged Zeus around the neck and whispered something into his fur. Zeus licked her cheek. Theo thanked them in the doorway. He meant it in a way he couldn't fully say. He walked to the truck with Zeus at his heel, the way Zeus had always walked. Not on a leash, not pulling, just beside him like that was the only place that made sense. He opened the passenger door. Zeus jumped in, turned a circle, and sat down. Theo got in, started the engine. He drove 2 blocks before he had to pull over for a minute. He sat with one hand on Zeus's back, feeling the slow rise and fall of the dog's breathing, and let it be real. Then he pulled back onto the road and drove home. 6 months later, the house was different. Not the one he and Adrian had shared. He'd let that go as part of the settlement, walked away without looking back. The new place was smaller. Single story, older bones, a covered porch that ran the full length of the front. Big yard in the back with a fence and 2 oak trees and more than enough room. It suited him. The contracting business had picked up in a way he hadn't expected. Word had spread through the trade network. Lattimore was available for new bids, no complications, full crew. The phone had been busy since January. He'd taken on 2 new apprentices and was turning down work he didn't have time for, which was a problem he didn't mind having. He and Malik had lunch on Fridays when schedules allowed. They didn't talk about Adrian much. There wasn't much left to say. Somewhere across town, in an apartment she'd moved into after the settlement, Adrian was starting over. A smaller job at a smaller firm. Word traveled in marketing, and the circumstances of her exit from the last one had traveled with her. Odessa hadn't called her in months. Not out of cruelty, Theo thought. Just because some distances, once opened up, are hard to close. He didn't think about her often. On a Thursday evening in late April, Theo sat on the front porch as the sun went low. The sky had gone pink and orange over the rooftops. The neighborhood was quiet. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower ran for a few minutes and then stopped. Zeus lay beside the chair, his chin resting on Theo's boot. Theo reached down without looking and scratched him behind the ear. Zeus exhaled, slow and deep, the way he did when he was fully settled. Theo leaned back in the chair and watched the light change. No tension in it, no waiting, nothing left to fight. This was the lesson about priorities, not the one Adrian thought she was teaching, the real one, the simple one. He looked down at Zeus. Zeus looked up at him. That was enough. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.